I was reading my wedding vows when my older sister walked straight behind me and ripped the wig off my head. She held it up like a trophy and screamed, so the entire lodge could hear. Now he can finally see the bald cancer patient he's really marrying, a broken woman who can't even give him children. My mother laughed loudly, the kind of laugh she had clearly practiced in the mirror. My father stared at his shoes. 160 guests looked anywhere but at me. I stood at the altar, my scalp cold, still clutching the paper with my vows. They didn't know that in the fourth row, a man I hadn't spoken to in 9 years had just stood up. They didn't know my fiancé had spent 6 weeks uncovering everything. What happened next didn't save my wedding. It ended a secret my sister thought she had buried forever. My name is Erin Ashford, and I am 31 years old. If you've ever been destroyed by the people who were supposed to love you the most, especially when they used your illness and your body against you, drop a comment, "I'm here," and tell me where you're listening from. Subscribe if you want to see the woman they tried to break finally flip the entire board. Let me take you back to earlier that morning, before I ever walked down the aisle. The bride suite at the lodge had a long east-facing window that looked directly onto the first ridge of the Rocky Mountains. April light in Estes Park is thin and sharp. I was 31 years old, 9 months into remission, wearing a lace front wig I had chosen myself in January when I decided my regrowth was not quite long enough for the photographs I wanted to look back on in 20 years. That was the exact reason. Not shame. Choice. My phone buzzed on the vanity at 11 minutes past 3. It was Wesley. He wrote, "Whatever happens today, I've got you. Trust me. Even if the room stops making sense for a minute." I read the message twice. The second time, I noticed the qualifier. Even if the room stops making sense for a minute. That was not the message a groom sends 30 minutes before his wedding. That was the message someone sends when they know something. I put the phone face down. I told myself he was nervous. I opened the folded paper on the vanity, my vows, written by hand, 4 sentences long, the last one about surviving. I read through them once, quietly, moving my lips. Someone knocked. It was time. My father had asked to walk me down. 2 nights before, at the rehearsal dinner, Kenneth had cleared his throat and said, "Erin, I'd like to give you away, if you'll let me." I had told him no, not unkindly. I said, "I want to walk in as I am." He accepted that. He always accepted things. That is what silent men do. The aisle was flagstone, laid down by whoever had built the lodge in 1928. String lights ran the length of it. My mother sat in the front row on the left side, wearing champagne, which is a shade too close to white, and Judith knew it. Meredith sat 2 rows behind her, hairline slick, dusty pink dress, not a bridesmaid though I had asked her to be. Trevor Sinclair, her husband, sat in the 3rd row on the right, alone at the end of his row. And in the 4th row, wearing a slate gray suit I did not recognize, was a man who looked at his knees when I passed. I noticed him because he was the only person in the lodge not looking at me. That was strange. I filed it away and kept walking. I did not know his name yet. I had known it once. The officiant let me read first. I unfolded the paper. My voice was steady. "I promise you the ordinary things," I said. "That I will remember I chose you when it is easier to argue than to be kind. That I will let you take care of me when I need it. That I will let you make the coffee, even the mornings I want to prove I can do everything alone." A small ripple of warmth moved through the guests. Kenneth's hands were folded in his lap. Judith's eyes were on the ceiling. "And I promise to remember that surviving is not the same as being alive." I heard high heels on the flagstone. Behind me, coming steady. Meredith. The steps stopped a meter behind me. There is a particular way a hand reaches for someone else's hair when it means to pull. It is not gentle. It is not violent. It is decisive. Meredith's fingers curled around the base of my wig at the nape, where the clip anchored to the styling comb, and she lifted straight up and back, like a woman opening a closet she had a right to open. The wig came off cleanly. She had practiced this. She held it above her head. Her face was flushed. Her mouth was ready. "Now he can finally see the bald cancer patient he's really marrying," she shouted. So loud the lodge rafters caught the words and threw them forward. "A broken woman who can't even give him children." The words hit the air like a physical object. Something you could see falling. Then Judith laughed. It was not a nervous laugh. It was not a surprised laugh. It was a laugh with edges, timed just right. 3 beats long. The kind of laugh a woman practices in a mirror the way an actress practices a monologue. I heard her draw breath after it. I heard her say, in the same tone she used to ask if I wanted more mashed potatoes at Thanksgiving, "Let's see if he still says I do." Kenneth stared at his shoes. My scalp was cold. My hair had grown back 3 inches in 9 months, and it was still cold. The paper with my vows was still in my hand. Wesley did not look at Meredith. Wesley did not look at Judith. Wesley looked at me. Then 3 people in the room moved at once. In the 4th row, the man in the slate-gray suit rose to his feet. He did not walk forward. He did not speak. He stood. Trevor set down his champagne glass without drinking from it. He did not stand. He just released it. Wesley took 1 step forward toward the officiant and asked, in the same voice he used on a scene when he needed a stranger to trust him, "May I speak?" The officiant looked at me. I nodded. I did not know what I was nodding for. I would not know for another 4 minutes. Wesley took the microphone from the officiant's stand. He said, "I need to say 3 things. To understand what happened at that altar, you have to understand what happened at every kitchen table before it. I grew up in a 1-story house in Cherry Hills Village, an old money suburb south of Denver, at the end of a cul-de-sac lined with blue spruces. My mother was a nurse before she was a manager of nurses. My father was an accountant who kept every tax return of his career in a filing cabinet in the garage, ordered by year, alphabetical within year. I remember the sound of his pencil on the newspaper when he did the Sudoku. Steady, clean, never scratched out. He was a man who preferred a problem that came with an answer key. My sister Meredith was 3 years older than me. She was the child who did not sleep. My mother told this story often, in front of guests, in front of us. Meredith didn't sleep through the night until she was 2. Aaron slept through the night at 7 weeks. Aaron was the easy one. Judith said that the way another woman might say, "Meredith took my time," she meant it the same way. On the front of the fridge, held up by a magnet shaped like Colorado, was Meredith's schedule. Ballet Tuesdays, math tutor Wednesdays, orchestra Fridays. I looked for my name on that fridge for most of my childhood. It was never there. When I asked once, at 8 or 9 years old, my mother said, "You don't need it, honey. You're the lucky one." For most of my childhood, I did not notice. I noticed at 11. Meredith had a math tutor who came to the house on Wednesdays for $200 a session. I asked at the dinner table whether I could have piano lessons. Judith looked at me the way she looked at leftover green beans. "Meredith needs the tutor. She struggles. You're smart, Aaron. You don't need to be paid for." I understood it then, though I did not have the words. Being easy was not a virtue in my mother's house. Being easy was a form of debt. You could always be asked to wait, because you were the one who could. That was the story of my next 10 years. Meredith needed the trip. Meredith needed the dress. Meredith needed the therapist and the tutor and the new car when she got into the university she wanted. I got a used sedan and a hug that felt like a receipt. By the time I was 17, I believed her. I really believed I was the lucky one. That is the most efficient kind of gaslighting. The kind where the child does the work for you. My father was not cruel. He was not weak. He was tactical. When I was 14, I was in the kitchen refilling my water bottle when I overheard him on the phone in the hallway, talking to his brother in Ohio. I do not know what my uncle had said, but my father answered in a voice he did not use in front of my mother. It's easier not to correct her when she's decided. It saves the argument for later. He said it the way another man might say, "I keep the good scotch in the back." I learned silence from him. I learned that a house survives when someone chooses not to have the argument. I did not learn until later that a house is not the same as a person. A house can survive silence. A daughter cannot. Meredith took a degree in marketing at Denver University and moved into public relations for a real estate agency in Lodo. She was good at it. She was the kind of woman who could enter a room and shift the temperature to her preferred setting. She married Trevor Sinclair in the summer of 2020. Trevor was a software engineer with a salary that made my mother comfortable and a temperament that made him easy to overlook. At their engagement dinner, Judith gave a toast. She said, "Meredith deserves the wedding she waited so long for." I sat at the far end of the table. I clapped. Within a year, she and Trevor started trying for a baby. 6 months later, they moved to IVF. Somewhere in there, I did not see the exact moment, Meredith started tracking me. Not literally. Not with an app. But with a small notebook of grievances I did not know she was keeping. Everyone believed she would be a mother eventually. Trevor believed it. Judith believed it. Meredith believed it as if belief were an obligation of the family. I went to the University of Colorado at Anschutz Medical Campus in Aurora for a Bachelor of Nursing. I worked part-time at a free clinic that served women navigating unplanned pregnancies. That was the choice I made at 19, and I still stand by it. Some of my patients thanked me. Some cried in the parking lot. Some laughed once they had made a decision, and I saw them the next month with a coffee in one hand and a plan in the other. In August of 2015, I met a man in the medical library. He was carrying an anatomy textbook the size of a small dog and looking for an outlet. He asked if he could sit at my table. He told me his name was Owen Beckett. He was starting his first year of medical school. I was starting my junior year of nursing. We dated for 8 months. He was, in the way people are at that age, the first person I had ever loved. In March of 2016, at 22 years old, I found out I was pregnant. I told 2 people. My mother, because I was afraid of her. My sister, because I trusted her. I had 4 hours before my shift. Between March 2016 and May 2024, a lot happened. I finished my BSN. I started as a labor and delivery nurse at Front Range Regional Medical Center in Denver, catching between 3 and 5 babies a shift, holding the hands of women who thought they were dying and were not, learning to say 2 sentences in the right order at the right time. I did not date seriously for 6 years. I told myself I was busy. I was, in fact, punishing myself. I did not talk about Owen. Not to friends, not to therapists, not to myself. I told myself the story that he had left me without a word, and I stayed loyal to that story the way a soldier stays loyal to a country that has already fallen. In early May of 2024, I found a lump. I was 30. It was a Sunday morning. I had done a routine self-exam because I do routine self-exams. That is the first thing they teach you as a nurse. Know your baseline. The lump was in the upper outer quadrant of my left breast. It was small and it did not move. I called my mother before I called my doctor. I do not know why. I had not called her for a hospital-related thing in 8 years. I said, "I found something, I'm going to get it checked." She said, "It's probably nothing. You've always been dramatic." I wrote her words down in the Notes app on my phone, exactly as she said them, and I dated the note. I did not know why I did that either. I know now. A week later, my mammogram came back abnormal. Dr. Amelia Winters was 50 years old, and she had a Colorado accent I could tell had been softened deliberately over the course of a career. She sat across from me in a small consultation room with a diagram of the breast on the wall behind her. "Stage 2, she said. Tumor 2.3 centimeters, 1 positive lymph node. The plan was 6 cycles of ACT chemotherapy, a lumpectomy, and 6 weeks of radiation. You're young," she said. "Your prognosis is good. But this year is going to test you." I called Meredith, not Judith. I do not know why. I sat in my car in the parking garage and I said, "I have breast cancer. Stage 2. Meredith was quiet for 4 seconds. Then she said, "At least you're young enough that if it's aggressive, it'll be fast." She meant that as a comfort. I thanked her and hung up. Meredith came to my apartment the next day with a case of coconut water and a card. Judith did not come. She called 4 of her friends from her Bible study before she called me. When she called me at 7 that night, she said, "Meredith is very fragile right now, Erin. She just started cycle 3. She really cannot take on my daughter's cancer this week." That was the sentence. That was the exact sentence. My daughter. Not my daughters. Just my daughter. Kenneth drove out that Saturday with a Sudoku book. He put it on my kitchen counter. He said, "I'm sorry, honey, I don't know what to do." He said it like he was apologizing for not knowing the answer to a Sudoku. He stayed for 40 minutes. He asked me if I needed anything from the store. I said no. He drove home. I sat at my kitchen table and understood, with the same clarity I had understood biology in nursing school, that no one in my family was going to stand next to me for this year. That is a kind of loneliness that has its own texture. Chemotherapy started in June, 6 cycles of ACT, spaced out through November. My hair came out in week 4. It came out fast in the shower in a way you cannot prepare for. I stared at what was left. I called a colleague from work. Her name was Kaylee Morgan. She was 26 then, a labor and delivery nurse I had trained during her orientation year. She came to my apartment with an electric clipper she had bought at Walgreens on the way over. She did not say a word for the first minute. She just plugged it in. She sat me on a kitchen chair. She started at the crown. I closed my eyes. Neither of us spoke for 4 minutes. When she was done, she wiped my scalp with a warm washcloth and said, "You know your sister isn't actually pregnant, right?" I opened my eyes. She was looking at my mother's Instagram over my shoulder. Meredith had posted a photo of herself, in a swimsuit, holding her lower belly with one hand, captioned Cycle 3. Manifesting. My mother had reposted it. Kaylee said, "That's a stimulation shot she's holding, honey. That's her prep phase. She's not pregnant. She's advertising." I said nothing. Kaylee did not push. She swept the floor and left. Surgery came in December. Radiation ran from January into February of 2025. By July, Dr. Winters called me into her office and told me I was in remission. Then she said something else. She said, "Erin, your fertility. You're young. Your ovaries responded well to the ovarian suppression during chemo. My conservative estimate, and I am conservative, is that you have a 55% chance of natural conception if you wait 2 years." I stared at her. She said, "That's a real number. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." I did not tell my family. I did not tell my sister. I did not tell my mother. I did not put it in the group text. I already knew what they would do with it. That same afternoon, on my way out of the building, I ran into a firefighter carrying a 2-year-old with a scald burn. His name was Wesley Kensington. He was 32, a lieutenant with the Denver Fire Department, and he had a canvas jacket that smelled faintly of smoke even after it had been washed. He set the child down in the ER triage chair, told the intake nurse everything she needed in 22 words, and then sat down in the waiting area next to me because it was the only open seat. I was wearing a scarf on my head. He did not look at it. He looked at me and said, "You look like you're waiting for bad news that's already happened." I laughed. It surprised me. I had not laughed in a room like that for 1.5 years. He offered me half a package of ginger cookies from his jacket pocket. He said his shift had started at 6 that morning and he had not eaten. He asked what I did. I told him I caught babies for a living. He nodded, as if that was a normal thing to hear, and said, "That's the opposite of what I do." I said, "Not really. Sometimes I catch them the wrong way." He said, "Yeah, same." He asked for my number. I gave it to him. Wesley learned I had cancer on the second date. I told him at a diner in Cap Hill over pancakes at 11 at night. I did not soften it. I said, "You should know. If you're going to want a second date after this, We should get it out of the way. He put down his fork. He said, I know 4 families through Kids Get Cancer too. I volunteer with them. I know what this looks like. I'm not going anywhere. But if you need me to, tell me now. I did not tell him to go. Over the next 4 months, while I finished radiation and started coming back to shifts part-time, Wesley learned how to make 4 things that would not make me nauseous. Bone broth, loose quinoa, mashed potatoes with just a little butter.